Salutations everyone! Previously I have talked about the living characters that I would like to see come with us into the recently opened Shadowlands. In today's video, we're going to flip-flop the question and discuss who I hope we see in Shadowlands themselves. Those who have died and have made a new life within the various realms of the dead. This list will be of characters whom I would love to see again and have yet to have been confirmed by Blizzard. I will try to get to covering those characters who have been confirmed when I get the time. But with all that being said, let us get started. Kel'Thuzad. Once a member of the Council of Six within the CAIRNE Tor, Kel'Thuzad was driven out due to his obsession with the necromantic magics. He would be called by a voice to Northrend, where he would become a necromancer and lead the cult of the damned with the purpose of guiding the way for the Burning Legion to return, essentially becoming the Lich King's right-hand man. Kel'Thuzad has died 3 times in his existence. The first time was at the hands of the paladin Arthas Menethil, and the other 2 times were when he fell to the adventurers of Azeroth. He possessed a corporal lich state thanks to the use of the Sunwell in the Third War to resurrect him as an Arch-Lich. His phylactery, like those that all liches have that keep them tied to this world, has yet to be destroyed completely. Kel'Thuzad himself has been lost in the Shadowlands since, meaning we may yet encounter this lich within Maldraxxus or elsewhere. Maldraxxus is the place where most liches or necromancers go, so it would be the perfect place for someone like him to set up shop. I do wonder how he will react to the news of not only Arthas' defeat, but of the Lich King's crown being shattered in general. It is quite possible we might gain him as an ally, or he'll once more be a threat to us in our travels. Liam GREYMANE. The only son of Genn GREYMANE and Crown Prince of Gilneas, during the Cataclysm, the Great GREYMANE Wall, which had previously protected Gilneas from the Horde in previous wars, was shattered, allowing the forces of the Horde to at last take Gilneas, which neighbored Lordaeron, now occupied by the Forsaken. During the invasion, the Queen of the Forsaken herself, Sylvanas Windrunner, would join the battle to end the King of Gilneas' life with a poisoned arrow. However, Liam leaped in the way, saving his father's life by taking the arrow in his stead. The resulting wound would ultimately end the young prince's life. He was buried in Gilneas just before they departed to join the Alliance. Guessing where Liam would be is actually pretty difficult for me. My best guess would be Bastion or Maldraxxus, considering how much he gave for his people and how he died. The main interest would be if Genn got to see him again, and could perhaps give him a chance to say some final words to his son, and vice versa. It's pretty clear Sylvanas left a gaping wound where Liam once was for Genn, and through Liam, the King of Gilneas could find some peace, though likely not dropping the hunt for Sylvanas either, as I imagine seeing how much damage she's doing to his son as he lives in the Shadowlands will give him more motivation to strike her down. The Saurfangs. Dranosh, Broxagar, and Varrock Saurfang are some of the most notable orcs who died to rather large lore characters. Broxagar the Red died during a time-traveling trip to the War of the Ancients, and successfully left a small wound on the Dark Titan Sargeras, while on the demon's home planet of Argus, just before meeting his end. Dranosh died during the war against the Lich King at the Wrathgate to the very blade of the Lich King, Frostmourne, where he was slain and then raised as a Death Knight, being freed by the heroes of Azeroth months later. Varrock died recently to Sylvanas Windrunner in a Mak'gara where he successfully exposed her in front of the Alliance, Horde, and her very own loyalists on her true feelings towards the Horde. In her anger, she would blast him before he could land any more strikes on her with her newly found power given to her by the jailer. I think it would be interesting to see the Saurfangs not only interact, but be involved in the story once again, considering how mighty and legendary they were in life. Varrock dying so recently to Sylvanas means he is in the Maw, unfortunately, and it would be great to see uncle and nephew in action together to free Varrock from the jailer's grip. Varrock especially deserves a better place than the Maw. I imagine all three of them rightfully would be found in Maldraxxus, considering how they each died. In fact, a lot of orcs really go to the Maldraxxus when you think more about it. TIRION FORDRING. One of the first 5 members of the Order of the Silver Hand, TIRION was amongst the few that survived or remained active on Azeroth. Becoming the wielder of the Ashbringer, he led the charge against the Lich King during the war on Northrend, combining the Orders of the Silver Hand and the Argent Dawn into one faction as the Argent Crusade. He even got the 2 factions of the Alliance and the Horde to cooperate in their war against the Scourge. It would be TIRION who saved the heroes of Azeroth later from being raised into servitude by Arthas by shattering the legendary rune blade of Frostmourne. He was later killed by a massive Eridar, Crossus, on the battle for the Broken Shore, passing along his legendary sword to the High Lord just before he was consumed by his wounds. TIRION naturally would be found in Bastion, however, because he died after the opening of the Tomb of Sargeras and the very start of the war against the Legion, he likely ended up in the Maw, sadly. This could mean we could reunite with TIRION and possibly free him so he could join his brothers and sisters in Bastion, as he truly belongs there. This could mean a living Turalyon and maybe Foul, along with the other first Paladins of the Silver Hand, could reunite. We could also potentially get some words between a living Eitrigg and TIRION, who were rather good friends and never really got to say goodbye to one another. The Dead Dragon Aspects. Malygos the Spellweaver, Ysera the Dreamer, and Neltharion the Earth Warder. All dragon aspects lost to corruption and died because of it. Malygos, aspect of the Blue Dragonflight, was driven mad by the loss of his flight in the War of the Ancients, and the use of magic by mortals. He was slain in the Nexus War, where he met his end within his lair of the Eye of Eternity at the hands of the adventurers who were aided by Alexstrasza, his sister. Ysera, aspect of the Green Dragonflight, was corrupted by the Nightmare Lord Xavius, through his meddling with the Tears of Elune, one of the Pillars of Creation. It was thrown into her chest when she had attempted to end his corruption to the land and the dream. She was twisted into the Nightmare's image and was unfortunately put down by Tyrande and Val'sharah's defenders. Neltharion, aspect of the Black Dragonflight, would be made into the Old God's puppet through years of tampering into his head, which was amplified by his charge by the Titans to watch over the very earth the Old Gods were rooted in. He would forsake his duties as Earth Warder and become known as Deathwing the World Breaker, being used to push the Hour of Twilight closer through various means. He met his end to the combined might of the Dragon Aspects, the Dragon Soul, and the World Shaman Thrall. All Dragon Aspects, in reality, were never truly evil. Even Murozond, or rather Nozdormu, who died in the future and alternate timeline, really only became evil, or corrupted, when the Old Gods got involved. I could see Malygos and Deathwing go to Rivendreth to answer for their crimes, while Ysera would make perfect sense to go to Ardenweald, where there is already a connection to Elune supposedly established. This is where we could see all dragon aspects in their prime, rather than the corruptive state that they each died in. This would especially be great to see Neltharion be who he once was before the Old Gods got involved. Alternatively, there could be a realm specifically meant for dragonoids or elementals, as the dragons, or proto-dragons, once hailed from the elemental planes. This could be where all the dragons go regardless of their deeds. I would love for Rathian, Alexstrasza, Kalik, and possibly Nozdormu to reunite with their kin, and to see these dragon aspects who have died go back into action and help us restore the Shadowlands to its proper glory. CAIRNE Bloodhoof. High Chieftain to the Bloodhoof Tauren and the other Tauren tribes, CAIRNE joined the Horde during the Third War after discovering a great bond between his people and the Orcs, who were led by Thrall in search of their destiny. CAIRNE became not just an advisor, but an older brother to the young warchief Thrall, and helped groom him into the great leader that he is today. Unfortunately, just before the Cataclysm shook the planet of Azeroth, the Elder Tauren died to Garrosh Hellscream in a Mak'gara to decide the fate of who would lead the Horde. This was secretly orchestrated by the hands of the traitorous Megatha Grimtotem, who poisoned Garrosh's weapon, ensuring CAIRNE's end. Though the Tauren would survive this ordeal and CAIRNE's young son Bane would take lead, many hardships followed after this. CAIRNE made a few returns as spirit to provide his only son some guidance, and even recently pointed out the imbalance and chaos that the Spirit World or Shadowlands was going through in the Tauren Heritage Armor questline. I would love to see CAIRNE in any of the realms aside from the Maw and Revendreth, mostly because I rather enjoyed his character and felt they should have done more with him. They could explore the Tauren afterlife and what it means to them, and also reunite him with his son and Thrall, who didn't leave on the best of terms. VARIAN WRYNN. High King of the Alliance, husband of Tiffin, and father of Anduin Wrynn. VARIAN had a long life of hardships, living through the First War as his kingdom collapsed as just a young boy. Losing his wife to riots and rocks, being turned to a slave for the Horde's amusement, being literally split into two and then reunited into a whole person again. The man had gone through a lot, but through his trials had found his way and became beloved by his people and the Alliance. Ultimately, he met his end on the Broken Shore, being turned into dust by the ultimate Gul'dan, leaving his son to take up the mantle of leadership after his fall. I think that VARIAN WRYNN had one of the greatest arcs and deaths in Warcraft's history, and I don't think there is much left to tell with him. However, I do think Anduin is deserving to talk to his father one last time, and also for VARIAN to see how much his son has grown. It should be noted, since he died at the start of Legion around the time the Machine of Death had been broken, it is very possible he too ended up in the Maw, like so many others, and needs to be saved. The HELLSCREAMS. Grommash Hellscream and Garrosh Hellscream died in battle for what they believed in. Grommash Hellscream, chieftain of the Warsong clan, one of the first to drink Manor's blood, and great brother and friend to Thrall, had given his life against the Pit Lord, who had damned his people, striking him down and freeing the Orcs from their blood curse, but ultimately died when doing so. Garrosh Hellscream, former warchief of the Horde and overlord of the Warsong clan, had led the Horde to a dark time, ultimately turning the world and his very Horde against him through the vision he had for it. Ultimately, the headstrong Garrosh died at the hands of Thrall, whom had named him warchief in the first place, ending his prodigy in a Mak'gara. Both Garrosh and Grom had made many mistakes in their life, but ultimately were doing what they thought was best, even if it turned out wrong. While Grom died a hero to most, Garrosh died a man who caused trouble and nearly shattered his whole faction. There's a lot of blood to swallow, and I think that seeing both Hellscreams would do Thrall some good. Especially with Garrosh, who once was Thrall's friend, but both had made many poor decisions that led him to a very poor death. It could be through Garrosh that Thrall could find his way to wield the elements once again, and also forgive the young Hellscream. While Grom, it would do Thrall some good to meet with his older brother once again, and reflect on what has happened since the Third War. I think that Garrosh would ultimately end up in Revendreth, while Grom would probably end up in Maldraxxus. As stated, most orcs ended up there. King RASTAKHAN. Former king of the Zandalari Empire, father to the newly anointed Queen Talanji. RASTAKHAN was king of the Zandalari for over 200 years, surpassing most trolls in their usual lifespan. This was mainly due to his connection through the Loa of Kings, Razan, who was his personal Loa and allowed for him to rule for as long as he did. However, through the betrayal of his advisor, Prophet Zul, he lost his Loa and nearly died from an attempt at his life. Thankfully, the Horde saved Rastakhan and his empire from falling to Zul and his Dark Master. He was able to rule until the Alliance arrived and wiped out his naval fleets. They also came to end his reign, in which they succeeded. At one point during his time of crisis, he had turned to the Loa of Death, Bwonsamdi, to ensure a future for himself, his daughter, and his people. This deal was that he and his bloodline would be devoted to Bwonsamdi both in life and in death. After Rastakhan died, this would fall to his daughter, Talanji. Given that the other side will play a role as a dungeon within Shadowlands, I imagine we might see Rastakhan, and perhaps even his ancestors, in servitude to Bwonsamdi, and might even play a role in aiding his daughter from freeing their family from this fate. It would be good to have Rastakhan essentially redeem himself after the many blunders he made as king, and fix the very mess he placed on his own daughter. LEI-SHEN, Emperor of the Mogu, Thunder King of Pandaria. LEI-SHEN was one of the most powerful of Titanforge creations known on Azeroth. During a time of hopelessness and war for his people, the Mogu, LEI-SHEN had successfully defeated his creator and god RADEN, and claimed his titanic power for his own, forever being known as the Thunder King. Through him, the Mogu Empire flourished, and Pandaria was his for a time. Its people locked in chains, bent on serving the Mogu tyrants. LEI-SHEN had even gained the Zandalari as allies, who knew the lands of Azeroth better than most. But the Thunder King's victories in his pursuit for dominance across Azeroth were cut short, as he would meet his end against his Titanforge cousins, the Tol'vir, who were also created by RADEN. The Tol'vir activated the Halls of Origination, which is basically just a Titan facility that's meant to reset Azeroth in case the corruption of the old gods goes too far, and basically resets it. They do this just enough to end LEI-SHEN and his forces, who were trying to claim the halls for their own. However, LEI-SHEN had managed to uncover the secret to cheating death, and shared this secret with the Zandalari, who would use it much later on, during the mists parting from Pandaria. And although LEI-SHEN had been mighty in the early years of Azeroth, he would be crushed by the unity of the Alliance and Horde, meeting a second death. I personally believe while LEI-SHEN was trying to do the work for the Titans, he would actually go to the Maw, not only for his actions upon other races and his creators, but also because he managed to find a way out of the Shadowlands, and be brought back, which would make him a threat to the Shadowlands as a whole. The Mogu themselves were able to master death by shaping their bodies out of stone and placing the spirits, or other spirits, into them. I could definitely see LEI-SHEN possibly causing a ruckus in the Maw or elsewhere, and it would give us an opportunity to see more of the Thunder King, who honestly deserved far more screen time considering what he was capable of. ORGRIM Doomhammer, Chieftain of the Blackrock Clan, War Chief of the Horde. ORGRIM was instrumental in the redemption and victories during the early life of the Horde on Azeroth, not allowing the Horde and his people to be used by the Shadow Council and the demons from across the stars. He single-handedly challenged and killed the War Chief at the time, his chieftain, Blackhand. As War Chief, ORGRIM wiped out most of the Shadow Council and pushed for victory against the Alliance to claim Azeroth for themselves, but ultimately he failed and was later imprisoned along with the rest of his kin. But ORGRIM was crafty and powerful and managed to escape what would one day be called the Undercity. However, he would put himself in exile after seeing what his people had become after the Second War. But through the son of Durotan, Thrall, the once Warchief regained his energy, and together the orcs would free their brethren from the internment camps that bounded their people. ORGRIM ultimately died from a knight's lance and passed his armor, weapon, and title to Thrall, which Thrall would use to further redeem their people and make the Horde what it is today. ORGRIM to me is one of the most important figures in Warcraft's lore, but has been barely and rarely shown within the game. Shadowlands gives a massive opportunity to give him a major role, likely within Maldraxxus, as more orcs would likely end up there. It leaves so many possibilities for reunion, especially for Thrall, who no longer wears the Doomplate and does not wield the Doomhammer, which could come off as a heavy surprise and shock to ORGRIM, learning what had become of the Horde and Thrall after his death. He's one of my favorite characters in Warcraft. I would love to see him and interact with him in the Shadowlands. And that's it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed my choices, and I really hope we get to see some of these guys within the next expansion. Who do you want to see in the Covenants and various realms in the Shadowlands? Let me know down below. Go ahead and give this a like, give it a share, and well, if you didn't like it, I suppose give it a dislike, I guess. Ring that blessed bell if you want to get notified about this channel. Come and join us on the Discord. We would love to have you for more discussions. Maybe follow me on Twitter to hear me more often. Join me on Twitch to see me play the video games. I am streaming Witcher currently on Twitch on Tuesdays and Wednesdays around 4 PM Eastern Time, and I plan to play Reforged on its release as well. Hope to see you there. Or maybe support me on Patreon. A little help goes a long way, and I would greatly appreciate it. All of those are in the description down below, as well as some other things. But until next time, my friends, see ya!